Inauguration Day, January 20th. Watch it with us. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, and Jeremy Boring. Live from D.C., Donald Trump's historic second term officially begins. Coverage starts at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch live on DailyWire Plus.
Today, the Matt Walsh Show, a horrifying video goes viral of a severely disabled young woman showing off her scars from her quote-unquote gender-affirming top surgery. We have to talk about that. The FBI shuts down its DEI office ahead of Trump's inauguration, and a flight attendant starts a GoFundMe after she gets fired for twerking on an airplane. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Well, Monday, history is going to be made. The Daily Wire will be live from D.C. as Donald Trump takes the oath of office. Watch it all live and celebrate the 47th president with 47% off your membership. Use code 47 at dailywire.com/subscribe and join us live. You know, as a homeowner, there's nothing more important to me than protecting my family and our home. With the new year here, I've been thinking about making smart investments that really matter. Speaking of protecting what matters, let's talk about your gutters. I know not the most exciting topic, but hear me out on this. I've learned that gutters are trickier than they seem. One wrong move with DIY solutions, and you could end up with costly water damage to your roof, foundation, or siding. Thankfully, there's a permanent solution waiting for you with Leaf Filter. When you invest in Leaf Filter, you're protecting your entire home. Leaf Filter's patented technology is designed to keep everything out except water. No gaps, no holes, just a clean, maintenance-free system backed by a lifetime no-clog guarantee. Over 1 million homeowners have already made the switch. And if you're a low-maintenance homeowner like me, just think about how great it would be to finally check cleaning the gutters off of your ever-growing list of New Year's goals and to-dos. When you schedule your free inspection, a Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will thoroughly clean, realign, and seal your existing gutters before installing your new protection system. They'll even provide a no-obligation estimate so you know exactly what to expect. Protect your home and never clean out gutters again with Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system. Schedule your free inspection and get up to 30% off your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/Walsh. It's a free inspection and up to 30% off at leaffilter.com/Walsh. See representative for warranty details. You know, one of the ways that trans activists have been able to sell gender ideology to mainstream audiences is by hiding its consequences. They would rather use sanitized terms like gender-affirming surgery and gender-affirming care as opposed to actually showing people what these procedures entail in real life. And in that sense, gender activists have a lot in common with abortion advocates. They'll throw a million euphemisms against the wall, but they definitely don't want you to see what this stuff is in practice. They don't want you to see an abortion in practice because once any moral, sane person witnesses something as grotesque and abhorrent as an abortion, they'll oppose it immediately. No amount of political indoctrination will convince them otherwise. And by the same token, trans activists have generally understood that nobody wants to actually see these gender-affirming procedures or their immediate aftermath that they talk about so much. They know that support for trans ideology would collapse if more people observed what exactly this butchery entails. Indeed, support for trans ideology has collapsed precisely for that reason. But there are some activists who are so committed, so brainwashed, that they can't help themselves. They are the true believers of the religion, to the point that they genuinely can't perceive how even the most shocking barbarism will come across to everyone else. So they film it and they advertise it. They revel in the kinds of horrors that will shake any morally decent person to his core. And that's why millions of people have just become familiar with an Instagram account called Disabled Trans Boy. It's everywhere on the internet at the moment, largely due to reporting by Sarah Fields, Andy No, Billboard Chris, and a few others. The account belongs to somebody using the name Micah Leroy with he, him pronouns listed. The channel's description reads, "I have CP, cerebral palsy, and I'm also a trans man." Now, before I play some videos from this account, I want to make it clear that this is a very troubling story. The details and kind of the full picture are emerging gradually thanks to the journalists I just mentioned. And then finally, the Daily Mail, which I'll get to in a few moments. So I'm gonna present the information as we currently have it. Over the past several weeks, the Disabled Trans Boy account has uploaded videos that appear to document the process of a 19-year-old woman who is disabled obtaining a quote-unquote gender-affirming double mastectomy so that she looks less feminine. This is someone who has cerebral palsy, a disorder that severely affects motor control. It also is a disorder associated in many cases with a significant degree of cognitive impairment. And yet this person was able to obtain, apparently, top surgery. A doctor permanently altered her body with irreversible surgery despite the fact that she is very severely disabled. Now, here's the most recent video on the account, which again is extremely hard to watch. So if you're watching the video version of this podcast and you have any kids in the room with you at the moment, I would pause the show and come back to it when they're not around, because this, as I said, is deeply disturbing, but it's what's happening right now in this country. So here it is. It's so unimaginably horrific that your first reaction, or hope anyway, is that it must be some kind of bizarre hoax. I mean, you want to conclude that there's no way that any doctor would agree to perform this procedure, or that somebody would film any of this proudly and put it on the internet. It seems like it has to be some kind of setup, or maybe it's being taken out of context, you might think. You may wonder whether this young woman actually had a double mastectomy because she had breast cancer or something. But that does not appear to be what happened here. All of the evidence, including a Daily Mail interview with this disabled woman and her family that we'll get to in a moment, clearly indicates that indeed doctors removed the breasts of a disabled young woman in order to try to turn her into a boy. And this video is not a one-off. There are posts documenting this woman's journey. There's one video, for instance, which was uploaded just prior to the double mastectomy being performed. It's from December of last year. The description reads, quote, "It's the night before top surgery. I'm so effing excited. After 1 month, I'll be free. Bye." And there's content like this going back for several years. One post from May of 2023, for example, reads, "I'm so excited to get my name changed on my birth certificate." Another caption appears next to this image from March 2023, which shows the girl in a parking lot. And the caption reads, quote, "I saw a doctor today that said that I'm almost ready to get on T. Hashtag transgender pride, hashtag queer disabled pride, hashtag FTM." There's only one comment under the image. It reads, quote, "Awesome. Everyone should be able to live as their true self." A few weeks later, there's a bunch of posts documenting her use of testosterone. And then there's this footage in which someone who identifies as autistic persuades this, quote, disabled trans individual to touch a pot, even though the pot says that disabled people shouldn't touch it. Watch.
I'm Amelia. This is Micah. I bought him a plug and pop for college. Number 4 on the instruction packet. Hold on, I'm finding it. Yeah, he gets a hoot out of this. Says, "Do not let people with disabilities or children approach the pot to avoid burns." Micah has CP among others. I have autism. We're gonna touch this pan. Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole thing is just painful to watch, so we'll just cut it off there. She's clearly being used for clout by activists who don't care about her, and she clearly doesn't have the capacity to consent to any of this stuff, even as an adult. Spoiler alert, in case you're interested, they both do touch the pan. I mean, the reason why you wouldn't want someone like that touching a pot like that is that it gets really hot, and she obviously does not have full use of her extremities, and so trying to manage a very hot pan like that could cause severe burns. It's not ableism, it's just the reality. Now, the woman's name, before she or her parents changed it, was Mara J. Leroy, and she's from Minneapolis. Andy No reports that Mara's mother is, unsurprisingly, a DEI/anti-Trump activist who is, quote, extremely woke and has involved her child in her leftist activism. She's been separated from the girl's father for some time. Surprise, surprise. And Billboard Chris reports that the divorce was finalized about 2 years ago. No says that Mara was medically transitioned, quote unquote, in high school, presumably as a minor, prior to receiving this double mastectomy. And the Instagram account that we were just looking at would certainly support that reporting. No also reports that a state representative named Alicia Lish-Klazowski was recently photographed with Mara and her mother to celebrate legislation that would advance gender-inclusive restrooms, among other left-wing agenda items. And here's that image. And as you can see, Mara and her mother appear to be in the bottom corner there, along with the legislator who uses they, them pronouns, by the way. And since these videos and images began going viral, this legislator hasn't responded in any way. I mean, this is how normalized all this insanity is in left-wing jurisdictions like Minneapolis. Democrat politicians openly, of course, supporting it. And then there's this from the journalist Sarah Fields. She found this post from the Disabled Trans Boy account from a year ago. And as you can see, it reads, quote, "This literally changed my whole life in 5 minutes, being there my first year of YIG, because before I had no idea about pronouns, but now look at me," close quote. YIG, in case you're unfamiliar, stands for Youth in Government. It's a YMCA program that puts high schoolers and middle schoolers in model governments in states across the country. And apparently, with support from the government, they are indoctrinating disabled children into gender ideology. I mean, you heard it just there. You saw it in the caption. I didn't know about any of this stuff, and now I'm into it. I'm fully bought in. Late last night, the Daily Mail picked up this story. They reached out to the disabled woman and her family to kind of get their side of the story here. And I'm going to read a section of this article. The kicker comes at the end, so stick around. Quote, "A transgender teen with cerebral palsy who went viral after posting about her breast removal surgery has told DailyMail.com that she knew what she was doing and is happy with her choices. Micah Leroy, 19, a University of Minnesota student, had a double mastectomy last month and shared footage about the procedure and her painful but swift recovery on Instagram. Those videos exploded on conservative social media on Thursday, with critics calling Micah a victim who should not have been green-lighted for a sex change because of her disability. But speaking with DailyMail.com, Micah said she had a long history of gender identity issues and that she is glad she provoked a reaction because she wanted to blow up the internet. Micah's case raises tough questions about whether disabled people and minors should be allowed to take puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones and undergo sex change operations. Micah's disability, cerebral palsy, affects movement and muscle control. She's able to speak and write for herself, gets straight A's in college, and is involved in state politics. "I am making these decisions," said Micah. "I am my own legal guardian." And people don't understand that. Now we'll get to the kicker because you might hear that she's able to speak, and then you get these very clear quotes. "I'm making my own decisions," and it might seem a little bit odd to you because we just played the video of this person, and it seemed pretty apparent from that video that she really can't speak. We just heard it. So what do you mean she can speak and communicate? Well, here it is. Daily Mail reports this. Micah can speak on her own, but was aided in this interview by her mom, Kathy Leroy, who was effectively translating her words. Okay then. Micah explained how she's not being exploited and coerced by her parents, and we know that because her parents translated and told us that that's what she said. Now, needless to say, the doctors and parents in this situation deserve to be in prison. This is one of the most horrific cases of abuse of the disabled that we've ever seen. I mean, it shocks the conscience. That is, if you actually have a conscience, which explains why trans activists see this not as shocking and horrific and the sort of thing that should send multiple people to prison, but as something wonderful and worth boasting about. Now, as terrifying as all this is, you might be tempted, if you're extremely naive, to kind of dismiss this story as an aberration, as not reflective of the gender transition industry broadly. You might say, for example, that some doctor must have gone rogue here to perform this operation on someone who's so clearly disabled. But that's not the case. As the Post-Millennial reported several years ago, leading experts in the field of so-called trans medicine have said that autistic nonverbal minors can consent to sex changes. In fact, there was a conference recently featuring a lead author on the WPATH transgender guidelines in which this very topic was discussed. Quoting from the Post-Millennial, some of the world's leading experts in transgender healthcare convened in San Francisco. Psychiatrist Dan Karasik delivered a talk titled Managing Patients with Co-Occurring Mental Health Diagnoses. And in the audience was none other than Dr. Diane Aronsaft, a leading figure in the field of child sex changes, who shared baffling anecdotes about nonverbal children expressing their gender identities. The Post-Millennial says it obtained audio of the talk, in which, quote, Karasik can be heard asserting that severe autism should not prevent a person from being approved for an experimental medical sex change, dismissing the common concern of parents that a fixation on gender is due to the intense focus of interest typical of autism spectrum disorder, and engaging in the bizarre exchange of ideas about youth communicating their transgender identity through drawing. In other words, the bleeding edge of so-called trans medicine is that children who can't even speak are somehow capable of revealing that they're born in the wrong bodies. And of course, this is a fundamental tenet of trans ideology. They often talk about recognizing, quote, trans children shortly after birth. But this ideology is now being put into practice in a new way. It's resulting in irreversible surgeries for young people, even severely disabled and impaired young people, which are being broadcast on Instagram. Now, yes, it's true that the woman in these videos is not a minor legally. She's 19 years old, according to the reporting we have. She was brought into the sex change pipeline as a minor, and then shortly after she became an adult, the surgery was apparently done. She may be suffering from a crippling disability, and she may be extremely easy to coerce and manipulate, but according to leading experts in the field of gender-affirming care, she can consent somehow to having her body permanently disfigured. So this is a story that underscores once again the need to abolish all of these so-called gender-affirming surgeries, regardless of the victim's age. Whether you're over the age of 18 or not, it is still unspeakably evil to remove the healthy body parts of people who are confused about their identity. The gender transition industry does not suddenly become ethical just because the patient happens to be 18 years old. Regardless of the person's age, they're still being manipulated and led into doing things which have consequences that they do not fully comprehend. And the result, as you saw, is horrifying beyond all imagining. The truth is that nobody, regardless of disability or mental capacity or lack thereof, should be subjected to medical experimentation and disfigurement. So once we outlaw the mutilation of children, the next step is to ban it for everyone. Protecting kids, as I've always said, is only step one. Step two is to take down the whole industry entirely, every piece of it, and leave nothing standing. A full ban across the board, regardless of age, regardless of circumstance, is the only way. It is the only way to end this wickedness once and for all. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Let's start with this, because why not? It's Friday. Kathy Hochul gave her State of the State address for New York a couple of days ago. And I could give that address very quickly. The state of the state is that it's bad. Things are bad. You've got psychotic hobos running wild in the subway. You got crime, violence, drugs, vigilantes gunning people down in the street. I mean, it's literally Gotham City. So it's bad. But Kathy wanted to distract from that. She wanted to make up for how horrible things are. And she did that by, and I did look this up. This is real. This actually happened. This is not a joke. She did that by opening the State of the State address with a dance performance. Now, not by her, okay? It wasn't quite that bad. She didn't start dancing, but she brought in an allegedly professional dance troupe to perform for the assembled crowd, who thought that they were coming just to a standard political speech, and instead they got this. Watch.
I got my suit and tie. I wanna leave it all on the floor tonight. And you got mixed up to the nines. Let me show you a good thing. All dressed up in black and white, and you're dressed in that dress I like. Love is swinging in the air tonight. now. Let me show you a few things. Let me show you a few things. Show you a few things about love. Now we're in the swing of love. Let me show you a few things. Show you a few things about love.
There you go. And that's a professional dance troupe. These are the pros. They dance for a living, and yet somehow they can't dance. I mean, this is a real problem, I have to say. You know, there are just, in my opinion, there are just far too many people dancing these days, and so few of them know how to dance. I mean, there's so much dancing going on, and I just think we need to get a hold on this. We gotta do something about it. I'm not saying that people should be banned from dancing generally. I'm not saying that we should outlaw dancing. I'm not like the bad guy from Footloose, who, I mean, I never saw Footloose. I don't really know what it's about, but I assume that the villain wants to outlaw dancing. And then Kevin Bacon is like, no, I'm going to dance. And then he dances and the other guy, I don't know but it's not that. I'm not saying, but I'm saying that we should only allow those who are qualified to dance. There's just so much dancing happening these days on camera so often for people who don't know what they're doing. And I don't think the rest of us should be subjected to it. It's a public health crisis. It's a public health crisis is what it is, that the rest of us have to watch this. So you should have to get a dancing license. You should have to go to a DMV, dancing management something. We'll work on the acronym. But you should go to a DMV-style place to show off your dance moves, and then you get a license, and it expires in 5 years or something. And that performance would be unlawful, unlicensed dancing, and everybody involved would be executed. Or just sent to prison. I'm just kidding. They would just go to prison. Fox News has this. The FBI has closed its DEI office. Fox News can confirm. In recent weeks, the FBI took steps to close the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, effective by December 2024. The agency didn't specify why it had closed the office, although many Republicans have been critical of it and its prioritizing of diversity, equity, and inclusion, saying that it overshadowed national security. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn sent a letter earlier this month to FBI Director Christopher Wray, claiming that radical DEI practices had endangered Americans following the New Year's Day terrorist attack in New Orleans. And now, with just a few days until Trump officially takes office, they're disbanding the DEI office. Now, and it also says the FBI's Office of Diversity and Inclusion was created in 2012 during the Obama administration with its goal to provide guidance and implement programs that promote a diverse and inclusive workplace that allows all employees to succeed and advance. So it's very encouraging to see that these massive changes are happening already, and Trump still has not officially taken office. DEI is careening rapidly towards the trash bin of history. It's not only being defeated, it's not only being torn down, but it is it is going to be barely even remembered when things are said and done. Because keep in mind, most of these institutions adopted DEI. Well, they said with the FBI, it was in 2012, still very recent, but many of these institutions adopted DEI and it kind of was mainstreamed in the last 3-4 years. Most people had never even heard of it before then. And soon, nobody will hear about it anymore. And it becomes this weird little blip on the radar, this short and rather bizarre episode of history, which is why the major risk that I can see right now, and the thing that we need to look out for as we head into the coming months and years, the potential problem caused by all of these victories, one after another, politically and culturally. It really has been win after win, and even in the courts. But the risk is that it will, as we've discussed, potentially cause a sense of complacency. And that's the one thing we need to guard against. Not to rain on the parade or take away from the celebration over the wins. You know, I've said many times it's important to celebrate the wins. That is an actual thing that we should do. But once we've done that, you got to get back in the game. Because here's the thing. What's important to understand is that I mean, look at all these things that are crashing and burning right now. Wokeism, DEI, gender ideology, the left-wing race hustle. It's all collapsing. We're landing blow after blow. And so it might feel like society is kind of waking up from a stupor. And people are looking around and going, man, how did I ever support that? Hey, what happened? And some of that is happening. I mean, there are some people who are almost literally waking up. And for those specific people, you don't have to worry about them falling back under these particular spells. So the person who was tolerant of or even actively supportive of something like gender ideology a few years ago, but now sees it as the insanity that it is, and there are a lot of people in this category, it's very unlikely that that person, a couple of years from now, will be back to being a trans activist again. Because once you wake up and see this stuff for what it is, you can't unsee it. But the point is that the people, the forces that pushed this stuff, the institutions, the powerful people who use these things to manipulate and coerce and gain and retain power, they never believed any of it to begin with. So there's been no revelation for them. They didn't wake up, right? They knew what they were doing all along. There's been no conversion experience, no revelatory moment for them. And those people still exist. They're not going away. They're not going to say, oh man, we really screwed this one up, and then just go away. No, they're still plotting. They aren't just going to give up their power and influence. So now they're looking for the next DEI, the next gender ideology, the next COVID, the next George Floyd. All of these events and ideas that they use to manipulate so many people in so many horrifying ways, they're looking for the next one. And the important thing to understand about that is that the next one, when I say the next one, that doesn't mean that we're going to see an exact replay of those particular events and ideas. It's like they say, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And so they're going to look for the thing that rhymes with the thing before, not is exactly that. So you hear people say, oh, they're looking for their next George Floyd. And certainly they are. But the next George Floyd won't necessarily be just another black guy killed by the cops, where they try to recreate the hysteria that followed. And with that hysteria, they were able to exploit to maximum effect. Now, maybe that will be the next George Floyd. They've made some attempts to kind of recapture that magic. But most likely, the next George Floyd is some other kind of singular event taken wildly out of context and used to inflame the resentments and anger of certain groups against others. And it doesn't necessarily have to be another quote unquote police brutality event. It's the same thing with COVID. Everyone says, wow, what's the next COVID? And yeah, maybe when we talk about the next COVID, it's going to be some other virus, disease that they come along and say, oh, you got to quarantine for this. But most likely it won't be that, at least not anytime soon. The next COVID could be something else. It could be some other kind of thing that they tell us is a public health crisis. And you have to radically change the way that you go about your everyday life because of this thing. Maybe as a virus or maybe as something else. And we've seen this repeat over and over again. That's how they get away with it. That's how they get away with repeating and using the same kind of tools and methods to control people, is because if you're not aware and if you're easily manipulated, you'll look at it and you'll say, no, this is totally different from that thing before. This isn't the next George Floyd. What do you mean? This is totally different. So we have to, we cannot not become complacent, as I said. All right. Here's a headline from, what is this from? Washington Post. A headline that is supposed to, I guess, sound sinister. The headline is, anti-abortion advocates look for men to report their partners' abortions. The article says, as anti-abortion advocates launch legal efforts to stop abortion pills from reaching women in states with bans, they are increasingly turning to one group with uniquely intimate and specific information to help them find cases: male sex partners of women who decided to end their pregnancies. The strategy propelled a first-of-its-kind lawsuit filed last month by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton that cited firsthand information from an unnamed biological father to accuse a New York doctor of illegally providing abortion pills to a woman in the Dallas area. The case was inspired by a report Paxton's office received from the man and emerged as part of a broader abortion law enforcement operation the Attorney General has quietly created that includes searching for potential plaintiffs. This partner-focused approach will shift to a more public phase next month when Texas's largest anti-abortion organization launches an advertising campaign on Facebook and X to reach the husbands, boyfriends, and sex partners of women who have had abortions in the state, with the goal of recruiting them to file lawsuits against those who assisted the women in ending their pregnancies. Quote, the strategy right now is to tell dads that if you're the father of a child victim of an abortion, you have legal rights. There may be a way to hold these people accountable. That's according to John Ciago, the president of Texas Right to Life. And so that's what they're going to be looking to do. And this is what, of course, the Washington Post's reporting and left-wing media in general, this is what they're going to try to portray as this deeply sinister thing, because they're trying to get the husbands and boyfriends and sex partners of women to turn around and narc on their own wives and girlfriends. No, what's actually happening here is, well, it's exactly what the president of Right to Life in Texas said. It's actually empowering the men who are fathers of these children and who historically, thanks to so-called abortion rights, have had their parenting rights totally stripped from them. If you live in a state where abortion is legal and you're a father, you have zero rights over your own child. You have zero parenting rights for the first about 9 months of that child's existence, because the first 9 months of a child's existence occur in the womb. And during that time, if you are, as I said, a man in a place where abortion is legal, then you have no parenting rights. You have no parental rights whatsoever. Which means that to the extent that your child can be killed, can be removed from the earth, and you don't even get a vote. And this has obviously been going on for as long as abortion has existed in this country legally. Men are, when we talk about the kind of unseen, unheard victims of abortion, all the victims really are unheard. The first and primary victims obviously are the children, who are unheard, who don't have a voice. But there are also the men who are barely even talked about. Now, we do hear, even from pro-lifers quite often, about the men who, on the other side, on the flip side of this coin, are actually pressuring, their wives and girlfriends to get abortions. So we hear about that, and we hear those men being condemned constantly, and their behavior deserves to be condemned. That's contemptible, evil. Those kinds of cases where, in fact, the man wants the abortion to happen even more than the woman does, and the man's pressuring the woman. Now, of course, the difference there is that the man actually has no legal authority to force it. So the woman still has all the rights in that scenario. But, yeah, there are plenty of cases where a man uses other means to pressure a woman to get an abortion. It's an awful thing. So we do hear about that. What we hardly ever hear about are the men, and there are thousands of them. At this point, through the whole history of legal abortion in this country, probably millions of men who lost their children and did not want that to happen, were not supportive of it, did not want it. In fact, even begged the mother of the child, please don't do this. Don't take my child from me. Who told the mother, I will raise the child, and had no voice and no rights, and had to just sit by and watch as their child was killed. And it's these men are almost never acknowledged and are given no recourse. So this is what's happening now, at least in Texas, will be the tiniest little move in the direction of actually giving men some kind of power, or at least some recourse when this happens to them. And that is a very good thing. A very good thing amid a just incomprehensibly awful situation. All right. We'll lighten things up considerably here. Here's a viral TikTok video that I've been tagged in this a million times, and this is the only reason I know about it, but it's got millions of views. And in this case, this is a guy who made a video that seems to be really resonating with a lot of people. And here he's calling out the white conservative men who are judgmental of his hobbies. As I said, it's been viewed millions of times. Apparently great insights here in this video. Let's watch it.
Why is it that old men, especially old white men, and particularly old white conservative men, are so concerned with what other men do in their own free time? I'm sitting in the sauna today, and since your phone will explode if you bring it in there, I bring books or comic books in to entertain me, because I'm in there for a while. And this older guy walks in and he kind of mutters something under his breath at me, and I said, I'm sorry? And he goes, well, don't you think it's kind of childish to be reading comic books? And I said, no. Brings me happiness. Does that bother you? He goes, well, someday you're going to grow out of it and realize it's for kids. And I said, well, then I guess I'll be a kid who benches 290. Have you seen one of those before? And he goes, well, no. And I said, yeah. So leave me alone. It's not hurting you. But I do not understand this incessant need to critique what other men do in their own free time. And if you ask me, it's because they never realized that they had a choice. You can do both. Yeah, I bench 290 and I read Batman Hush in the sauna. Does that bother you? I deadlift almost 500 pounds and I wear hoochie daddy shorts. My PB bass is almost 10 pounds. If you fish in the Midwest, you know that's crazy. And yet, I let my girlfriend put nail polish on my nails sometimes because it looked nice. If that bothers you, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. For the people who are so willing to call other people betas and sheep, you guys follow the word of people you think are more masculine than you and will only do the hobbies that they say is okay.
Okay, so I should chime in here because I'm often accused of being one of those old white conservative men who judges other men for their hobbies. And let me say, first of all, I'm skeptical that this conversation in the sauna actually happened. It probably didn't happen. Basically, anytime a content creator recounts some conversation with somebody out in public that becomes the basis of a viral video after the fact, you should always just assume that it's made up. You know, maybe it isn't, but it probably is. General rule. Second, what are you doing in the sauna? I don't understand saunas. I've been in a sauna one time for 30 seconds and I sat down and I said, what? So is this it? It's just really hot? What's the point? I'm just going to sit and be extremely uncomfortable and sweating? I don't get it. Why would anyone do that? Choose to do it. It's like it's a torture chamber. It would be a great way to torture someone. So I don't understand that. As for me personally, I would not judge a guy for reading a comic book. I certainly wouldn't confront him about it. I don't care nearly enough, or at all, frankly. I really don't care. I do judge men who wear nail polish, on the other hand. Pun intended. Comic books are legitimate forms of art. It may surprise you that I have that opinion, but I do. So I have no issue with it. It's not for me, but if you enjoy them, cool. Who cares? Nail polish, though, is feminine. It's for women. And as men, it is good and healthy for us to act and dress as men. Why? Because that's what we are. You should act and dress as you are. Nail polish is for women. A man ought not behave like and dress like a woman. Why? Because he's not a woman. I mean, that's it. I don't know how else to explain it. Even if you did catch a 10-pound bass, which is impressive, especially for the Midwest. So congrats on that. My PB is 8 pounds, and I live in Tennessee. So, we're literally every angler but me has got a 10-pounder. So I bow to you on that point. But wearing, although you probably made that up too, wearing nail polish as a dude is girly and embarrassing, and you shouldn't. And you could say, well, it's none of your business. What do you care? I don't know. You volunteered that information about yourself. You didn't have to. You did. Okay, so don't do that either. Well, no one asked you. Not one single person asked for information about whether you wear nail polish. You just told everybody. And so when you tell us, this is what happens. When you tell people things and they have brains, they cannot help but form opinions about it. Because we're humans. We're human beings with our own perspective. And so any information you give us, we are going to have a perspective on it. And if you don't care about our perspective, don't tell us. You told us, you said, I wear nail polish. Okay, I'm hearing that with my own brain. And my perspective is, that's girly and embarrassing. What kind of man wears nail polish? Don't want our opinion? Don't tell us. You told us, that's my opinion. Okay? But that's not even the point that I want to make. What I want to say is this. Whatever your interests and hobbies are, the manliest thing is, if your interest is wearing nail polish, there's no manly way to go about it. But when we're talking about actual hobbies, whether it's fishing or comic books, the manliest thing is to be confident about them and not need anyone's approval. And yet this guy made a whole video angrily defending his hobbies and his nail polish habit. Didn't have to. Nobody asked for it. Nobody cared about it except for the guy in the sauna who probably doesn't exist. And if he does exist, you already had that conversation with him. You didn't need to launch into this story and this angry defense to the whole world. The rest of the world didn't know about it. We don't care. So the fact that you did tells me that you actually are not all that confident. You obviously do care what other people think of your hobbies. If you didn't, then the video wouldn't exist. And I notice this a lot because anytime I make, I talk about, give my opinion about some piece of media or movie or video game, whatever it is, I get flooded with these extremely angry comments from people desperately, furiously defending the piece of entertainment that they like. I was getting angry comments for days, because I said I didn't like Sonic. Okay, and that's my opinion. I watched the movie, and this is my opinion. Okay, my opinion is that it's horrible. But days of angry comments. Not a joke, as Biden would say. Not a joke. Not a joke. I'm serious. And the funniest thing is that those people all would say, I don't care what you think about the movies and shows I watch. No one cares about your opinion. Well, but you do. You clearly do. You obviously care a lot. That's what gets me. You need other people to approve of the thing you like. If you didn't need their approval, you would not be talking about it. You wouldn't be getting angry that people don't like it. Getting angry that someone doesn't like something you like is weird. It's weird, actually. And it shows an extreme lack of confidence on your part. I have hobbies that I like. Fishing is one of them. I've never made a single video ever angrily defending fishing because why would I? I know there are people who think it's a dumb hobby. I truly don't care. I have no hangups about it. So you're not going to see me, going into a whole long rant about it. And if someone else made a video where they're saying that fishing is dumb and it's pointless, I'm not going to leave angry comments. How could you say this? What kind of person are you? I was a fan of yours for a long time, but no more, if this is your opinion of fishing. I would never do that because I actually don't care what other people think of the hobbies that I have. I think there are a lot of people running around who do care a lot and claim they don't. And I don't know, just something you got to think about. If you really are that upset by other people not approving of or thinking your hobby's a little silly, then that's something you need to think about. And maybe it means your hobby is pretty silly, or I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But that's a you thing. That's a you issue. You need to work out. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the sweet baby gang.
Imagining Matt Walsh in customer service is mind-boggling. Yeah, it's mind-boggling for me too, and I was there. I also can't imagine it anymore, and I was there. I was there the whole time. And I was as bad at those jobs as you would think that I would be. That's all I can say. Jobs today are literally the easiest they've ever been. Saying it's the hardest is the most insane position I've ever heard. People used to work on a farm 15 plus hours a day, every day, no air conditioning, just plowing and back-breaking labor in hopes they survive, not take a vacation every year, not get enough Starbucks, etc., but to just not die. The idea of a 40-hour work week is historically brand new. These people don't have the slightest clue about history, and don't even get me started on the Great Depression. Yeah, I mean, that was my point. When you compare our situation historically, we all have it very easy. And yet you've got people claiming that it's harder now than it's ever been, which is just preposterous. And I think some of the people who make these claims obviously know better, but some of them really believe it. I think that there's this deep, chronic kind of historical illiteracy that people have, which by the way, the fact that other people have had it harder than you doesn't make it any easier for you, right? Just like, if you grew up with a boomer parent, and so you got the classic thing where you said you're hungry and or you didn't eat your meal or something, and says, "Oh, there's starving people in China." That whole deal. That might be, but it doesn't actually change whatever I'm experiencing. So I understand that, but it does. It's like I said yesterday. It should put things into context for you, and it should be a point of inspiration to know that. However hard your challenges are, there are people who've gone through much, much, much harder things and have started much lower kind of on the totem pole than you did, and they still succeeded. So I don't know. I look at that as inspirational. I look at that as, okay, well, then it's not whatever I'm trying to achieve. Here are the obstacles. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Okay, well, here are countless people over here who are trying to achieve something and had a much bigger obstacle they got over it. If they could do it, then I can do it. Matt, we have a recruiting crisis in the military. Also, Matt, we need to massively raise the standards for entry into the military. Yeah, well, those ideas are not in conflict, actually. When you have higher standards and you're trying to recruit men who want to defend the nation and kill the bad guys, you're going to succeed in bringing in a lot of those kinds of men. But when you lower the standards so that fat, unfit men and women can also join, that doesn't mean that you end up with the same number of strong warrior types, and then you're also just adding the fat guys and the women on top of it. I don't think it works that way. I think you begin to lose the warriors because they don't want to be a part of it anymore. It just doesn't appeal to them the way that it did before. Your advice about what young men should do is good, but as a 23-year-old, I've given up on marrying the right woman and raising kids, even though it's been a lifelong dream and a true purpose to existence. I live in Baltimore. Go Ravens. Hope we beat the Bills this weekend. But I'm a white guy in a radical liberal city that hates white men. My dreams are just unrealistic. Love the advice, but not everyone can achieve their dreams. Dude, you're 23 years old. You're 23. I mean, your dreams are unrealistic? At 23? What are you talking about? You're just at the starting gate. I mean, things have barely begun for you. The whole adventure is still in front of you. Everything is in front of you. I mean, talk to any successful person. Talk to anyone who you trust who's in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and ask them, like, where were they when they were 23? You're going to hear the same kinds of stories. You'll hear the same kind of stories you'll hear from me. 23 for me was 15 years ago. Do you understand what an epically long and winding and sometimes frustrating and difficult and exciting and unexpected and just wild road it's been for the last 15 years? I can tell you, 15 years ago, right, there wasn't a soul, there wasn't a single person in my life who would have thought that I would be where I am at this exact moment. If I had said to anyone 15 years ago that in 15 years I would be married with 6 kids, living in a nice house, the major question in my career would be, what should I do for my 3rd movie after the box office success of my 2nd? I mean, if I had said that to anyone, that that's where I would be in 15 years, they would have looked at me living in a barely furnished 400 square foot roach-infested apartment with no college education, no training, apparently no skills of any kind, and no future and no prospects. and they would have said that I was crazy. So your path, is going to be different than mine or anyone else you talk to who's older than you. My only point is that it's just at the beginning, and no matter how humble and how seemingly hopeless your situation is right now, I mean, your goals are not out of reach. They're just a long way off, right? You have to. They're out of reach. Like, you can't literally reach right now and grab them, but that doesn't. Maybe it's another way of putting it. They're out of reach right now, but they're not unattainable. You just have to start moving towards them. So when you say your dream's unrealistic, that just doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, I don't care about unrealistic. People have been telling me about unrealistic my whole damn life. I mean, even now, guess what? Like, it doesn't stop. Even now, I'll have people saying to me, if I say, well, here's what I want to do next, I'll hear, well, you can't do that. I mean, that's a little much. That's outside your wheelhouse. Okay, fine. But you could sit on the sidelines and watch me do it. Or watch me try and fail. At least I tried. Like, what the hell are you doing, you bench warmer? I mean, not talking to you, I'm talking to this hypothetical person. That's the attitude you have to have, and it's not ego. It just means that you know what you want, and you see the path, and you're going to go get it. So the great thing for you, and I say this all the time to young men of your age, the great thing for you is that the things are very low stakes. When you get older, for me at this stage of my life, if I take a big gamble and I fail, the consequences can be severe. I'll still take gambles, but I have to be smarter. I have to be more calculated. I have to always have contingency plans in place. You, though, you're 23 and single, no kids. It's just you. So you're lonely. I get that. I was too at your age. But you're also in a position where you can be nimble and adaptive and a risk taker. If you don't like where you live, you said in the city you live, then move. I mean, why you still live there? Just get up and move. And I know when I say that, there's going to be people who say, oh, it's not that simple. You can't just get it. Yeah, it is. No, it's not that simple for me to move because I have 6 kids. It's not that simple for a lot of people my age to move. But for you, at 23, no kids, not married, yeah, it is actually that simple. It is that simple, yes. So, look, I don't know what your dreams are. I mean, you said you want to get married and have a family. That's a great dream. That's a great goal. I assume you have other dreams too, dreams of what you want to do in your life and your career, what you want to accomplish professionally. It sounds like you're demoralized across the board, both in terms of finding a wife and having success in life. Your dreams are unrealistic, you say. Now, look, if you're 23 and you told me that your dream is to be a power forward in the NBA, then I would tell you that you need to recalibrate drastically. That's not going to happen. Okay, there's no path to accomplishing that right now. If you were 6 years old and you were in the 0.5% percentile for height and athleticism, and you said your dream is to be in the NBA, then I would say, yeah, go chase it. Go chase it. For you, though, and for me, that's just not a possible world. But I'm going to assume that isn't your dream. I'm going to assume your dream is something at least theoretically achievable. And we know one of them. You just said start a family. So there's no reason to give up on it. Just don't focus on the grand vision. Just focus on like, okay, you know what you want to do. You can imagine theoretically the steps that would need to be taken to get to that point. So you can conceptualize that in your head. And so all you have to think about is like, what's the first thing? What's the very first thing I need to do? If this is 100 steps from now where I want to be, what is the very first thing that a person who wants to achieve that should do? And then just do that. I mean, just take that first step, and then the second and the third, and you can't plan it all out right now because once you get to like step 40 and 50, it may turn out that step 50 is something you can't even imagine right now because that's just life. But the first step you can imagine, and you just you have to go do it. Turn this show off and go do that thing today. Well, listen to the rest of the show and then go do it. Heads up, everybody. Monday is the big day. The Daily Wire will be live from D.C. to bring you every moment as Donald J. Trump is sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. We're not just covering history, we're delivering it straight to you live and uncensored. And because 47 is the magic number, we're celebrating with 47% off new Daily Wire Plus annual memberships, and we're tossing in a free $20 gift for joining the fight. With Daily Wire Plus, you get all our shows uncensored, ad-free, along with unlimited access to exclusive movies, documentaries, and series that are literally reshaping culture. Don't miss this. Use code 47 at dailywire.com/subscribe for 47% off your new membership today. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. One of the first rules of the aviation industry is that, in general, you don't want to be in the news. When you're running an airline and everything's going well, then you're out of the headlines. It's only when things go wrong that you start to get noticed. It's like playing on the offensive line in the NFL. If fans are noticing you and announcers are saying your name, it means you're screwing up. It's not a good thing. And by that metric, things have been going pretty badly as of late for Alaska Airlines. The last 14 months or so have not been kind to the airline. First, there was the whole situation on board Alaska Air Flight 2059, operated by Horizon Air for Alaska Airlines. As you might remember, an off-duty pilot who was tagging along in the cockpit decided to try to crash the plane mid-flight. He attempted to disable the engines with the fire suppression system while they were flying over Portland, Oregon. That episode didn't exactly inspire confidence in Alaska Airlines' hiring process. By the way, that pilot was charged with 83 counts of attempted murder, but he immediately got out of jail after posting a $50,000 bond. So that's like $600 per person he tried to kill, just in case you're wondering how the legal system works in Portland. In any event, back to Alaska Airlines. Then there was the whole door incident where the door blew off the Alaska Airlines passenger jet in midair. Again, took place over Portland, Oregon. And again, it made people wonder what exactly was going on at this airline and how they were overseeing quality control on their planes. I probably didn't help matters for the airline when I found this footage on TikTok from the contractor that assembled the door, which is called Spirit Aerosystems. The footage identifies the engineering dream team at the organization. And in case you missed it, here it is again.
Let's go, girls.
All right, so we remember that one. It might actually be the exact same. Those are Kathy Hochul's dancers too, I think. These people get around. Now, to be fair, those sassy women didn't work for Alaska Airlines, but Alaska Airlines does still rely on these sassy women to make sure the doors don't fly off in flight. There's a lot of trust there. It turns out, despite these ladies' obvious dancing prowess, that trust was sorely misplaced. That brings us to the third and most recent embarrassing episode for Alaska Airlines, which was just reported a couple of days ago. And once again, it appears that Alaska Airlines has put far too much trust in women who like to dance instead of doing their jobs. Specifically, a flight attendant decided to celebrate the end of her 6-month probationary new hire period by twerking on an empty flight during a layover at 6 a.m. while waiting for the pilots to arrive. And she then posted the footage to TikTok. Here's what the video looked like, although the audio was originally a rap song called Ghetto that's been dubbed out for copyright reasons. For context, the caption on this video on TikTok, as written by this flight attendant, was, quote, "Ghetto bi till I die. Don't let the uniform fool you." Bi, B-I-H? What, is that a typo or is it? That's supposed to be, oh, that's, okay. So is that how the kids are saying these days? Do they say it that way or do you just write it that way? They say it that way. All right. Those sons of biz. Now, because of course, when you're 30,000 feet in the air, cruising along at 400 miles an hour, you really want the crew in charge of your comfort and safety to be ghetto. I mean, that's what you're looking for. I can't tell you how many times I've had a flight and afterwards somebody asked me how it went and I was like, oh, it was nice. It was a great flight. Crew was very, very ghetto. It was wonderful. Anyway, here's the clip. Okay. Oh yeah, there's no music. So anyway, there she is twerking. It's so much more awkward without the music. And okay, good. Now, very soon after Alaska Airlines saw this clip, in a rare example of accountability in modern society, they fired the flight attendant for violating their social media policies. And that decision led the flight attendant to set up one of the most entertaining GoFundMes that we've seen in a while. As of today, it's raised about $2,000 of its $12,000 goal, and which is way more than it should, but not exactly hitting the goal. Not hard to see why. The pitch isn't exactly the most compelling. It reads, quote, "I never thought a single moment would cost me everything. I worked as a flight attendant for Alaska Airlines for over 6 months. In between those 6 months, both of my English bulldogs died unexpectedly. My relationship was rocky because of the time I spent away, but I love my job, meeting new people, seeing the world, and creating a safe, welcoming environment for passengers. Although this was my dream job, I was using the income to fund my blossoming lingerie and dessert business." Then she gives the name, which I'm not even going to pass along. Both of your dogs died. First of all, that's a bit I mean, sorry for your loss. That's a bit suspicious. Were you too busy twerking and you forgot to feed them? I mean, how do they both die? So she's a bit of an entrepreneur, already identified something of a marketing opportunity here. It's enough to make you wonder if that was her goal all along. But then again, the GoFundMe isn't exactly generating a lot of interest, so it stands to reason that these businesses aren't taking off either. And as she goes on, she says that she's desperate to find another flight attendant job. And she also launches into a series of additional excuses. Quote, I was also celebrating the end of probation and making it out of a hard upbringing in San Francisco, California. Life, something many people in the industry could relate to. The video went, yeah, they could relate to life? I mean, yeah, true. I mean, we could all relate to life. We're all living. We all are alive, so we can relate to that experience. But I just don't. Why does your life involve twerking on an airplane? I don't know why. Why is that necessary? She said the video went viral overnight, but instead of love and support, it brought unexpected scrutiny. Without warning, they terminated me. No discussion, no chance to defend myself, and no chance for a thorough and proper investigation. Losing my job was devastating. I've always been careful about what I share online, and I never thought this video, which didn't even mention the airline by name, would cost me my career. That's you being careful? I would hate to see if you got a little reckless what you'd be putting online. So I guess she thinks that Alaska Airlines should have called in the FBI to investigate whether she was indeed the ghetto bitch who was responsible for twerking on the plane. Maybe she thinks there's some mitigating factors the airline should have considered, even though she uploaded everything she did on camera by herself, was clearly having a good time. And also, apparently, the airline isn't supposed to be grateful that she didn't explicitly mention them by name in a video where she's in uniform dancing on one of their planes. So, no, this is not any kind of grave injustice, but I will say one thing in defense of this flight attendant, which is that by the standards of modern air travel, she didn't do anything that unusual. I mean, pretty much everything about aviation is now as demeaning and low class as it can possibly be. All this flight attendant did was sort of embrace the fact as openly as she could. And this is a decline that accelerated during the lockdowns from 4 years ago. As the New York Times reported late last year, quote, unruly passenger behavior surged during the pandemic, prompting the FAA in 2021 to implement a zero-tolerance policy for such conduct and begin issuing fines instead of warning letters to offenders. The agency reported approximately 6,000 such incidents in 2021, a sharp rise compared with about 1,000 reports in 2020. The number of incidents reported in 2023 fell to 2,100, but still represented an uptick from the years preceding the pandemic. One of those brawls, by the way, took place at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. If you never saw this one, here it is. I'm not sure that using those plastics, so they're using the plastic signs that say, that the floor is wet. I mean, for a brawl, first of all, this is really lethargic. This is a pretty low energy brawl. If you're going to do it, and also if you're going to get charged for using a weapon in an assault, why, that's the weapon you're choosing? At least make it count, is what I'm trying to say. So this is something that at one time in our nation's history, not too long ago, you would just never see in an airport. And now it's common. I mean, at least there were no illegal migrant encampments in the shots. That's something. And meanwhile, along with flights, customer complaints are also way up. By some estimates, there were roughly 15,000 complaints filed by air travelers in 2019. By 2023, that number had risen to 78,000, which is an increase of more than fivefold. And these are statistics that, if you've been to an airport recently, are not exactly surprising. Also clearly a sign of much larger problems. We went from people flying in their Sunday best to twerking flight attendants and fistfights, WWE Royal Rumbles in the terminal. And we made that transition because air travel is a microcosm of American culture at large. More people are incapable of behaving like adults in public than at any other time in American history. We've become far too tolerant of this decay to the point that it's actually kind of surprising that Alaska Airlines actually fired this flight attendant. But you can't stop there. We have to make it very clear that anyone who behaves like this and then proudly uploads the footage to social media will be shamed and ridiculed until they never dream of doing it again, much less setting up a GoFundMe to beg for money. And that is why the self-described ghetto bitch stewardess and every other professional who refuses to act in a remotely professional manner while at work, especially on an airplane, are all today canceled. That'll do it for the show today and this week. We'll talk to you next week in D.C. for the inauguration. Talk to you then. Godspeed. The executive producer of the Matt Walsh Show is Sean Hampton. Our associate producer is McKenna Michaelis. The show is directed by Mark Jones and Trey Miller. Our production manager is Austin Michaelis. The show is edited by Jeff Tomlin. Our lead audio engineer is Mike Coromina. Our audio engineer is Ryan Reese. Our hair and makeup artists are Cherokee Hart and Andrea Bauer. Our wardrobe stylists are Kristen Galarraga and Cameron Lasko. Our director of post-production is Matthew Kemp. Director of production operations is Pavel Vodosky. Our chief broadcast engineer is Jeff Govin. And our assistant broadcast engineer is Allegra Rohr. Our lighting director is Keith Duggan. Our playback operators are CJ Hickish and Finn Pope. Our show assistant is Holly Merritt. And our production assistant is Mike Moran. Executive in charge of production is David Wormus. Executive producer is Jeremy Boring. The Matt Walsh Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2024.
Hi, this is Andrew Klavan. If you like American flags and automatic weapons and shaking your fist at homosexuals while fighter jets fly over in formation, come to the Andrew Klavan Show. We don't have any of that. But we will be making fun of idiots and praising God and laughing our way through the fall of the Republic. It's like an insane asylum for happy people. That's the Andrew Klavan Show right here on Daily Wire Plus.